saving the Sound. Kurt.
Thank you. It's always tough to go after Rosa. I'll just start out saying that I think you students are some of the luckiest people because you have perhaps the greatest congresswoman in the United States of America who's behind you. And I'm just going to tell a couple of stories here about New Haven Harbor. I think some of you students know some of the history of it, but it really is about both funding that's needed here in this harbor and also what's been accomplished with EPA funding in this harbor. I'm going to start out just talking a little bit about what would happen if there was no funding for this program. I'm showing you a report card that Save the Sound was asked to put together. And it's very graphic. It shows that water quality is green and pretty good down here in the eastern sound, and increasingly gets worse as you move to the west. And when you get over here in the Narrows, you know, it goes from a C- to an F. It's all based on data. It's all based on monitoring that agencies have been doing for 20 years. And if we stop funding that, we will be flying blind. We won't know how we're doing in the Sound. And another one I'm just going to talk about is, our beaches, building on what Rosa said, here in Lighthouse and at Fort Nathan Hale, two of our public beaches. Like every beach around Long Island Sound, the EPA gives a little bit of money under what's called the Beach Act to towns to go out and monitor the conditions. How much bacteria is in that water? How safe is it to swim? And it's done in a uniform, a common strategy. As you know from your science classes, that's essential that we approach these things in a uniform way. It's that small $1 million or $2 million that allows all the towns and the municipalities on Long Island out here. And I want to report that actually the good news is we grade all the beaches around the Sound. And your Lighthouse Park Beach here gets a B+. It's actually a good place to swim. But there are about 24 beaches that need a lot of help. We need to keep that data coming. We need to be able to inform parents about the conditions at those beaches and do better. I'll just talk a little bit. If you look around the harbor and you take a right beyond this dock, you start heading up into the West River. And we were fortunate with Rosa's help to be able to get some dollars to reopen an old tide gate there, open up the river, allowed fish to move up forward, improve Edgewood Park. How many of you ever been into Edgewood Park? Yeah, great place. The duck pond now looks more beautiful. It's got increased tidal flow. There's fish coming up that river that haven't been going up that river for 100 years. There's more we need to do up the West River, but my point is those dollars came from a combination of the Long Island Sound study and other federal dollars that this president wants to cut. I'll talk about greening the city. We're right now, colleagues of mine are over at Troop Middle School, and they're putting in some catchments, some green gardens that are collecting rainwater and getting it back down in the ground so it doesn't run off and pollute the harbor. It's making that Edgewood neighborhood more beautiful. It's creating a cooler neighborhood on many levels, and it's also cleaning up the water. Those kinds of projects are funded out of this pool of money. And I'll also talk for a moment about Connecticut DEEP. Our state agency has about 60 folks who are working full-time that are doing everything from planning on how to clean up the water here in Long Island Sound to enforcement when there are problems coming in and enforcing. Those 60 people are supported by the funds that this president wants to cut. That's 60 folks that will be out of jobs and water bodies that will be left naked as a result. And finally, I'll just tell a little story about seeing you guys this morning reminded me, believe it or not, there was a time when I was your age. I know it's hard to believe when you're looking at me, but there really was. And in 1969, I was like a junior in Hamden High School, okay? We had this environmental class, and we came down to take a tour of the sewage plant in New Haven, which was located here at this time, okay? So we walk into the sewage plant, and I'm expecting, you know, the guy who's running the plant to give us a big tour. And we find him, he's sleeping behind the primary tank. He's literally taking a nap and completely asleep. We had to wake him up. And I'll tell you the reason why he could afford to sleep back then. All we did back then is we had a settling basin where a fair amount of the, excuse my language, crap settled out of the sewage, okay? But like 40% of it was left and was chlorinated and was sent out to the harbor, and the harbor was a mess, all right? Since that time, we've closed that plant. We moved it across the harbor here, close to that big, tall tower. And we now have a super advanced sewage treatment plant that's taking out a lot of nitrogen, which is hurting the sound in general. And in the water, I would not recommend drinking that water. But when you hold it up today, it looks like you could drink it, right? And I'm going to just conclude with what concerns me the most, looking at you all today, is that the cutting of these programs is going to cut the science, is going to cut the ability of academic institutions to do research. It's going to cut EPA scientists. It's going to close the door to futures that you all have as scientists, as researchers, as academics. So, and the last thing I'll say is we're going down this Wednesday. Lou Birch and myself will be meeting with Rosa, but with many other folks, and we're meeting with Republicans. We're meeting with at least half of the folks we're meeting with are Republican congressmen. And we are begging them to please ignore the bad aspects of the president's budget, because all of these Republicans, who many of them on their websites say they believe in clean water, have stated that this is only the first idea, because as Rosa knows, it is Congress that holds the power of the purse, right? It's Congress that makes the decision. So we're calling on all good-hearted folks, Republicans, Democrats, to re-establish the investment in all of our futures, and especially in your guys' future. Thank you so much.
Thanks.